Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us here today. I have something really exciting for you. I have the marvelous Ben McGinty. I'm really impressed by him. I've learned a lot from listening to him. He is a starseed, and we're going to talk to him today about what is a starseed because I'm just learning a lot from him, like from Ben and other people who have talked about being starseeds and what that all entails. So without further ado, I'm going to invite him in to our live stream. Hi, Ben. How are you?
Hey, good, Renee. How's it going?
Oh, it's very good. Now, especially now that we have you here.
Nice, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
finally we get to connect.
yeah, I know he's a very busy person, you guys, but so we want to know a little bit about your journey first into hypnotherapy. What brought you there, and how did you arrive at this knowledge of being a starseed?
So my journey started, I would say, probably the end of 2018. Around the end of 2018, I was researching uh, near death experiences and just watching different interviews on that and watching different stories and things like that. And then eventually I came across Dolores Cannon, this woman named Dolores Cannon, and I started coming across her work and started looking into all of her interviews and getting into all of the topics and the metaphysical background and everything that she was into, and just started watching all her interviews. And one thing led to another, and her story and her work resonated very deeply with me. And so I kind of wondered why. And so after finding her and her work, I found out she had a school, an academy that she was teaching her past life regression technique. And so I ended up enrolling in that academy and studying with it, and met up with other practitioners that were students that were becoming practitioners. And we ended up doing regressions on each other, and started finding out some really interesting things about ourselves and stuff like that. And so yeah, and one thing led to another. I became a QHHT practitioner, and so I was working her past life regression technique, and it's a more advanced technique than the average, past life regression. I would call it more esoteric, because you can contact the person's higher self, what she would call the subconscious, and just ask it all these questions, all these universal questions that you have, and that you have about, yourself or your family or your upbringing, or any spiritual questions you got. And so I did that for a while, and then I just wanted to expand my toolbox, my hypnosis toolbox. And then I ended up enrolling in Hypnosis Motivation Institute in Los Angeles, and and studied clinical hypnotherapy, and graduated from HMI back in, um, it was about 6 months ago, maybe. And so I became a hypnotherapist, and I know you went there too, Renee. So that's kind of how we learned about each other too, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's an interesting journey, and I
Mhm.
love Dolores Cannon's technique, and I found the same thing. you learn the subconscious when it speaks to you, because I've had quite a few sessions myself. And I
Hmm.
was like, I knew it wasn't me because I'm very analytical. And I was like, that's not me. What is going on? It was really a very different experience. So, can you tell us what other modalities that do you practice or offer?
So that was the beginning. That was the start, I would say. And I would say Dolores Cannon was the catalyst to my awakening too. That's where I was living an ordinary life, didn't wasn't into real deeply into spirituality or metaphysics until I started on that whole journey because of her. Um, and so, but now I practice, after studying hypnotherapy. Now I practice energy healing now. I found this school called One Light Healing Touch off of Gaia TV network. And so they have two levels. They have a basic healers training and a master's healers training. And I completed the basic healers training, and this winter I'll finish the master's healer training, and shamanism as well. I've I'm studying shamanism, taking workshops with the Foundation for Shamanic Studies, and which goes pretty well with some of my past lives. I had, one of my past lives, I was a medicine man up there in the Pacific Rim where they have animal totems. And so the only part in the world where they have animal totems like that is like up there in Washington, or British Columbia and Canada in that area. So yeah, I was a medicine man up there in one of my past lives. But yeah, so I'm studying shamanism too. Um, and I'm gonna just take my time with it, and have fun with it and stuff. So, but yeah, so I do energy healing and stuff too. Yeah, on top of, being a hypnotherapist and stuff.
That is what fascinated me about you so much, because you have such a thirst for knowledge and
Hmm.
for learning about all the different modalities. Because you often, in our little group, in our little circle, post stuff about these schools, and I've visited a few, taken some classes, and I'm like, wow. And shamanism is especially interesting to me because my family lineage has shamans. And so I definitely have not learned all the things like you've learned about my life. I have been into several past lives, but I'm definitely haven't learned anything about being a starseed. I know years ago I wasn't even open to even thinking something like this. Like I never believed in reincarnation. I never believed that so much, but when I converted from Christianity, um, I'm no longer involved with religion, but I am very deeply involved with spirituality. And I did like you. I read everything I could get my hands on. I ran into Brian Weiss, tried to get a session with him and couldn't get one. And then I realized, hey, I can do this myself too. So um, which brings me to the next question. Can you tell us about why what you're doing is beneficial? Maybe not just with QHHT, but some of the other modalities that you're using.
Yeah. So, so the other modalities. Well, what I'm realizing now though, is part of a huge part of my path and my journey is to be a healer. Especially when I look back at my past lives and my starseed life, that was one of the major themes that was in my past lives, was I was a healer or a counselor type. So no modalities now I think is necessary because even though Western medicine and stuff is important, and there's always a place for that, especially for emergency medicine and surgery and things. But we need to bring back alternative healing as well. and we need to combine both of them, or combine everything that is out there, and not just limit ourselves to one area of healing. And it's really important. There's in my, like, currently now, a part of what started me studying healing modalities was, I there's a couple people in my in my immediate family that have came down with cancer and stuff, and so that really started me on my journey too of studying other healing modalities. And because I do take them to the doctor every day, and they're not getting any better, even though they're using Western medicine and stuff. And so I would like to combine, alternative healing as well. And so I think that's important too. And preventative medicine too, just to make sure we're staying healthy and watching our, nutrition, and just the basic things too that doctors really don't go over with us like they should be now.
Right.
Um, yeah,
There's been a
I
big
know you
change.
feel that way too about alternative healing too, right?
Yeah, so I've been a holistic researcher for years. So when I started college, I took some alternative medicine classes like EFT and learning about the different modalities. And that is my passion. So
Mhm.
nutrition is my passion, and I still have a desire to be a naturopathic doctor, but I've helped a
Mhm.
lot of people with eating nutritionally and with herbology and things like that. And so
Mhm.
it's interesting you brought up that should not just rely on one way of taking care of our wellness needs, because originally it was only one person that did all three, but they broke it up. So the medicine man or the shaman, they took care of your mental, emotional, and spiritual health. It was one person. But now it's broken up into this new society, Western medicine. We have the churches, and then we have the psychiatric field. And it's not always effective, like you said. And so, what doctors are even doing, they're using regression therapy because they realize more is needed. So there are
Mhm.
some doctors out there and some psychiatrists or psychotherapists that will use regression therapy.
Mhm.
So for the skeptics, though, Ben, about being this star seed, um, what do you have to say to them about you believing that you are a star seed, or what would you say to them?
Um, I would say I was skeptical too at first. I didn't, I wasn't into any of this either a few years ago, and if you would have had said the same thing to me, I would have just been like, well, what are you talking about? And I just had slowly learned it about myself, um, and uh, and other people, they say that other people are going to be going through their awakening as well in the next few years. So you can't force it upon anybody anyways. Everybody has their own timeline. Everybody's got to meet their own timeline when it happens for them. And if they are star seeds, not everybody are is star seeds. And a good book that you can start out reading too is one of Dolores Cannon's Three Waves of Volunteers in the New Earth, and she kind of describes that in there. And I'm a second waver in that book, and so. But yeah, people are in the next few years. There's going to be people that are going to be starting their awakening as well. Um, and being skeptical is healthy too, but you still got to be keep an open mind, and stuff like that. And so but like for me, I learned that I am an Octurian star seed, and that's where they have the Stargate in our galaxy. And I know a lot of religious people would refer to heaven or things like that. But the Stargate is where they process souls in between lives. And so what I did was I worked with the Octurian High Council, and I did like administrative work, and or I was like a researcher or somewhat. And I did that for quite a while until I asked for an assignment, and I met with my guides. And after deliberation, we decided that Sirius was a good starting point. So I had incarnations in Sirius A and in Sirius B. And when I incarnated in Sirius A in the beginning, I helped them. They were just starting out their civilization and trying to get past their little conflicts because they all had escaped the Lyra draconian wars, and there was different kind of beings that were out in Sirius, and so they were trying to get past all their little conflicts and become unified. And what I started out doing there was helping them with their policies and procedures and setting up their councils. And then, I had a few incarnations there, and eventually I ended up going through the Syrian mystery schools, and then after that, teaching in the Syrian mystery schools. And for those of you guys that want to look it up, they talk about Sirius being the home of the Ascended Masters. Well, that was one of the big major things that the Ascended Masters did was go through the Syrian mystery schools and then turn around and teach. And so Jesus, Cthulhu, Saint Germain all taught at the Syrian mystery schools, and I ended up teaching there too. And so I had incarnations in Sirius, then I incarnated in every star system in the Pleiades, and then I spent a long time in the Pleiades. And that was really expansive for me, for my soul in the Pleiades. And then when I in two of the star systems, Taygeta and Alcyon in the Pleiades, I was a part of the Galactic Federation, and I served as a counselor on the Galactic Federation. And then after the Pleiades, I went back to Octurus and worked the Stargate some more, processing souls in between lives. And an important part of being an Octurian Starseed is, if you're an Octurian Starseed, know that you have a natural ability to access the Akashic records, because the Octurians needed access to the Akashic records to when they were processing souls to help them with their life reviews. And so yeah, if there's any Octurian starseeds out there, know that you most likely have a natural ability to access the Akashic records. And so I worked the Stargate again in Octurus, and then they approached me and about helping Earth. And of course, being Octurian, you don't want to say no to a star system that needs help. So then I said, well, I just um, got back, and well, I skipped Orion. I went to Orion as an Octurian, setting up community meetings and stuff. I didn't have incarnations in Orion, but I was there as an Octurian. But then when they approached me about helping Earth, my first incarnation was in Lemuria. And then from Lemuria, I had random lives, on Earth, about under 15, maybe about 10 lives. And then now I'm here in this life. But I mean, there's a lot of lives in between that, um, you know,
That
so
is a lot. So
yeah.
let's let's unpack some of that, because what I mean, this is still very new to me. So what exactly is a star seed? And let's kind of touch on also the galactic wars, because that you were involved in the previous life. Because do you think that same thing might be happening now in our lifetime now?
Yeah, I think there is. Uh, well, the main wars came from um, in the beginning of our evolution as humans. There was Lyra and Vega, and that's where they say when Source split off and that piece of the that piece that split off from source they called the Elohim, and the Elohim started two civilizations, one um, masculine and one feminine, one divine feminine and one divine masculine. The divine feminine were the Vegans in Vega. They were like blue beings, kind of like that movie. What's the name of that movie with those blue beings? Avatar. So
Yeah.
they looked like the blue beings in Avatar in Vega, and then Lyra, they were Caucasian looking, and that was the divine masculine creation, and those were Lyrans, and that's in the Lyran star system. And so a long time ago, I don't even know how long ago, but of course, millions and millions of years ago, um, the they when they look into the Akashic records, it shows that the reptilians were kicked out of their own universe for basically starting trouble by avian beings, which were bird-like beings. They had the technology to kick them out of their universe. They were trying to send them back to source, but somehow deposited them in our galaxy, but in Draco, which is right next to Lyra. And so what happened was um, after that they attacked Lyra because they wanted all their resources, and killed about 50, over 50, they say about 50 million Lyrans. And so that was the beginning of the wars with the reptilians, and the Lyran and Vegans escaped their star systems because they were under attack by the reptilians, and that was the beginning of the wars. And then of course they spread out in our galaxy, went to the Pleiades, escaping the wars, went to Sirius, went to Orion, and then after millions of years there was just always wars and new star systems between the reptilians and the indigenous species in that area. And so but up until now, is it still happening? Most of the wars were happening in Orion, because it was such a big constellation with different star systems and planets in Orion. And where Orion is centered. It's like a good, not in the middle, but it plays a big part in our galaxy just because of where it's at and how many star systems and planets are there. And so um, eventually and then that's where humans come from, is from Lyra and Vega. That was the home of human consciousness. Millions, maybe up to a billion years. Who knows how many years, but that's what I like about being Octurian is Octurians were set aside to be spiritual guides, teachers, and healers, to be protectors, basically, of our galaxies. So Octurians are a separate consciousness from Lyrans and Vegans and all that. They're on a higher spiritual evolution, because they run the Stargate and stuff, and so. Um, but a good lady to follow is Debbie Solaris. She's another Octurian starseed like me, and she calls herself a galactic historian, and she does Akashic records readings too, if people are interested in that as well. And
I
so,
definitely have to try one myself because this
uh-huh.
is. But so you see how things have changed in such a short time for the worse. I don't know if it's for the worse because sometimes things seem like they're falling apart when they're really falling into place. But there seems to be a lack of concern by the powers that be about our environment, about the people. They're taking away our freedoms. They're destroying the earth. There's no freedom even with the animals. So that's why I'm kind of thinking, what is going on? Could there be the powers that be under the control of someone like that was born with the Lyrans, the Reptilians or something like that? I mean, there's so much information out about things like that, but what would you say?
You mean if there would be someone in
Something
control
against
here, like?
the dominant culture on this earth because
Yeah.
nothing's
You-
being done for preservation of our planet or our species, and it seems to be going from worse to worse to worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So eventually, when Orion was a pretty dark star system for a while because the reptilians really did try to conquer Orion, and but they but after millions of years of wars over there, they say that Orion now is finally of the light, and so it's not dark like it used to be. It's of the light now, and what happened was when it became of the light now, um, all the dark factions didn't want to stay there no more because they couldn't enslave the population there anymore. So guess where some of the reptilians went? Guess where they went? Some of them came to Earth and stuff, and they do say that a lot of the underground societies and things like that are run by reptilians here on Earth. um, I'm not exactly sure what organizations and things like that. I mean, I couldn't say for sure, like, oh yeah, this organization is definitely run, but they say that there is some reptilian factions here on Earth that are being run by reptilians. But reptilians did come to Earth millions of years ago, even before civilization started here, and that's where our dinosaurs came from. Is they used some of their genetics to see what would happen here on Earth, and that's where the dinosaurs came from. And so, of course, they ended up dying off, and then but um, yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see the changes. A lot of other extraterrestrial are the benevolent kinds are helping us behind the scenes and helping to uh, get the reptilians out of here. I know they blew up a lot of their underground bases all over the world. There was over 20 some bases. Now there's only three reptilian bases left, maybe even less now because they did get blown up by the Procyon, which are a benevolent race of ETs that look at us like they're cousins. And so we'll see because we're
Because we
supposed to
need
be,
to know. And from what
yeah.
I read, the, from all the stuff I read from Dolores and others, we're supposed to be this planet. We're supposed to have free will, but when you look at it, no one has free will. Not
Mhm.
even the animals. They're enslaving animals. Like people don't know, but the food industry has been selling uh, lion meat, horse meat. I mean, those are. I mean, you know, and who would
Mhm.
think of that? And the animals are just not free either. You know,
Mhm.
I guess if you're a bird, you can be free for a while because you can fly away or you can remigrate, but there's very little freedom here on this earth.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I agree with you.
so they say though that star seeds has they're supposed to be able to transcend the human condition more than others. So how would you say this is true for you?
Um, well, I would say physically, it's harder for star seeds to be here on Earth. I know a lot of times, We do come down with a lot of diseases or cancers because it's harder for us to process toxicity than it is for an earth soul, because we do come from the higher dimensions. We're used to the higher dimensions, so it's harder for us to be in the third dimension, as compared to an earth soul or things like that. A lot of us come in with a higher vibration, and that was the whole point of sending star seeds here, was to come in with the higher vibration and help with the ascension project here on Earth, and help, with going from 3D to 5D. Um, yeah, and so I know a lot of star seeds are more into metaphysics, spirituality, healing, all the stuff that I'm into now. But I did have to have an awakening and, break out of the 3D matrix and realize, I'm a much bigger soul than what I realized I was, and that goes for everybody, you know. And but
So
yeah, and
all
so
of that good stuff.
transfiguration though.
How
What
would
was
a
that?
person, how would our one of our listeners know that they're a starseed?
That's a good question because I kind of came across it by accident, not by searching for it, but um so a lot of the I would start reading up on start with Dolores Cannon's book of Three Ways to Volunteers in the New Earth, and if it does resonate with you, then most likely you are a star seed, and if it doesn't, then you're probably an Earth soul. Um, but if you do feel you're a star seed, start doing the things that I did. Start getting a past life regression. Start hanging out with other star seeds. Get an Akashic records reading. Start diving into the spiritual things and see what does resonate with you and what doesn't. And it's okay if it doesn't. All this stuff isn't meant for everybody. But um, and what's interesting though, what Dolores Cannon said was a lot of the star seeds that are coming in aren't really big on Earth families, and that's because we just want to come in here, like, and do our mission, complete our mission, and then not have to get stuck here, leave any roots, any loose ends here on Earth, and then go back to where we came from, to the star system of origin. Because if we do start a family here and have, and we get wrapped up into all the earth stuff, then we get stuck here basically because you have unfinished business. So, and that's true for me. I when I came in, I knew as early as 3, 4 years old that I didn't want kids. Um, which was, and even now when people tell me, why don't you just have kids, and I'm just like, no, no, I love my nieces and nephews, but no, kids isn't for me. I now I know why I didn't want kids. Before I didn't know the reason why I didn't want kids, but that's because, I want to go back to my star system of origin after this. Yeah.
So what generation are you in?
So
What
I was born in the 80s, so 84.
Okay.
Yeah. So they
A
would
lot
call
of
me a.
people in that generation or younger generations, they don't want children either. That's
Uh-huh.
interesting.
Yeah, and maybe that's because they probably are star seeds,
Uh-huh.
you know, and
Yeah.
so that's what I think. I don't know the percentage of the population that are star seeds or human souls, but um, somebody said a number one time, but I don't know how accurate it is, so I don't really say, but um, it'd be interesting to know the percentage of star seeds and stuff. And what about you, Renee? How do you feel? you're a star seed and you're opening up to the concept.
So let me tell you about my experience. I never believed in aliens. I mean, I dated a guy once. We got along so well, and we were so good together. And then he started mentioning the Galactic Center and
Yeah.
aliens, and I was like, okay, that's it. It's over.
Yeah.
Now
But
today, I actually do believe in aliens. And when I had my QHHT sessions, one of them, it was unbelievable. But I was on this planet, and I knew it wasn't Earth.
mhm,
Okay, because it didn't look like anything I had ever seen before. It was a dark planet. It was really rocky, and it was dark, right? And I was hearing things like, the practitioner was asking me questions about it, and I was telling her all the trees were rocked over, and like there was no life, and everybody left, but I refused to leave. I didn't want to leave, and I was like probably the only one there, and then she told me to ask what planet, and I saw a glimpse of myself in the beginning. I didn't get a good view, but I had what you would typically see on these sci-fi movies, and then
mhm.
the message that came to me that it was Krypton, and I was like, oh no! And my conscious mind turned on. I'm like, okay, I'm done with this. This is crazy. But then when I did do some research, there is actually a planet called Krypton that NASA has investigated, and it's a rocky planet, and
Mm,
it's nothing like you see on TV. It wasn't the crystals and all that. It was a rocky, dark planet, and
hmm.
so who knows? Maybe that's where I'm from. But
Yeah.
there's I don't know who I am. I mean, I do know I do have some ideas of who I am. I won't talk about it here yet, but I don't think I'm a starseed. But I do. Um, I am. I do have some frag. I'm a fragment of some higher
Mhm,
being. So I too. I've always been spiritual, even like when I was very very little. I went to church when my mom refused, and in the town that we're from, there's like a church on every corner. She would
mm,
study, and I would leave and go to church by myself. What kid? I wasn't even in school yet. So
mhm,
what kid does that? I've always had a spiritual passion. Christianity was my way for the longest time until I realized that wasn't my way. And then when I left all religion, my gifts started opening up. My hands heated up, and I didn't even go to become a Reiki practitioner at that time. And I started seeing auras and all kinds of things. I've always been interested in being a healer. Again, my family has a strong native background on both sides of my family, so I know that there has been shaman. My grandma used to heal in the church, um, and I was just flabbergasted that my hands would get warm, and but I've always had a keen interest in healing, like
mhm.
like when I was a kid, I wanted to invent something that was something to heal somebody. So that's just me. So as far as anything greater in the Galactic Center, I don't know about yet.
Yeah. So, what are you practicing now as a hypnotherapist? What's your specialty?
So I do things, of course, I do clinical hypnotherapy, but past
Mhm,
life regressions are my passion, quantum.
mhm,
And but I also work with the LGBTQ community and their families as a advocate and helping families stay bridged or connected with the individual that comes out, and helping the family come to terms with this new identity, and be acceptant, be accept the individual for who they
mhm,
are. because there's a grieving process, you know,
Yeah.
and especially for a parent, and then siblings too, so the family has to go through a healing process. And so I do have that certification to work with transgender clients. It's more pronounced, the grieving process with a transgender
Hmm.
individual than someone just coming out as gay, um,
Hmm.
that I've seen. And so that's one of my specialties, as well as healing the inner child, trauma recovery, anxiety relief. I actually do workshops on anxiety relief, and just helping boost, do some life script reprogramming, and self image building, because it's about self love, self esteem, self concept, and self awareness, and self love, and then self worth, and all of those combined helps rebuild who you are as an individual. So that's what I do. Those are my specialties.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. I studied the how to work with transgender clients too through HMI as well. But I haven't. I studied it, but I don't practice it because I do. Oh, I do. My number one specialty is QHHT, past life regression. Yeah, I just can't get away from it. It's just
But
too interesting, and it helps. To me, it's a really powerful
yeah, and
technique.
it can be also for transgender clients, because
Hmm.
Dr. Ivan Stevenson, if you research him, he actually uses regression therapy to help transgender clients
Hmm.
with their identity and acceptance in their body and who they are as an individual. So,
Hmm.
regression therapy can actually really benefit a person who is LGBTQ or transgender. So, it's just something to look into, because it's powerful for so many things.
Hmm. Yeah, and I remember Dolores Cannon mentioning too that one of the reasons, not the only reason, there's a few reasons, but one of the reasons that causes individuals to be a transgender was having multiple past lives as one gender and consecutively. So let's say somebody incarnates as a male 5 lives in a row, and then the sixth time they incarnate as a female. So in that life, they would they would probably identify, as probably as a man, even though they're in a female body. And well, that's one of the reasons she noticed was because they would incarnate as the same gender multiple times consecutively, and then that next life they would switch genders and then be born with feeling like a transgender. So I know that's she had mentioned that as being one of the reasons,
And
but
that's
yeah.
kind of similar to what Dr. Stevenson says too. But he has a lot of research. I've only read like a couple research articles he's written. He's
Mhm.
the only regression therapist that has gotten studies to be acceptable. Even
Mm.
though the psychiatric associations try to discredit, they weren't able to discredit him. They discredited Brian Weiss and all the ones before him. So that's the start of the what do I want to say? Um, the benefits of regression therapy as a
Mhm.
study, because
Mhm.
and you know, you these studies, you can make them to say whatever you want them to say,
Mhm.
basically. But um, because I think QHHT and other regression therapy is so powerful, it can actually do away with these other like the psychiatric in, that mode of healing. So
Yeah.
I'm not gonna credit it very well, but it is a very powerful tool to use to gain a good understanding of yourself, and to do some deep healing of your
Mhm.
physical and mental and emotional self. Um,
Mhm.
but kind of wanted to talk about a little bit about, let's say a person learns through a session that, and you kind of touched on this, that they maybe a star seed or some other being that you mentioned from another planet. How would you suggest that they go about navigating this new identity?
Navigating the new idea, I would say have a QHHT past life regression. That's a good starter. For me, I had a past when I was learning QHHT and I got regressed by another student. I know I went into a past life as a light being. My physic I didn't have any physicality. It was just like a beam of light. And so that's what started a lot of the questions too. I was just like, what was that? You can get some good information through a regression. Not always, though. In the beginning, when I was being regressed, in the very beginning, I was only shown Earth lives. So it did take me a few regressions down the road to kind of realize to start seeing my off-planet lives. And I think it happened that way for a reason. I think it so it wouldn't be too much for me or overwhelming for me. I think it was to prepare me at first. Um, so that's a good way. And another way to navigate it is use your own intuition. Start playing around with the ideas, and if it does resonate with you, then that's your intuition telling you there's truth to it. And if it doesn't resonate with you, then that's not a part of your soul. Start getting into spirituality. Getting Akashic records reading. That's pretty interesting too. Getting Akashic records because you can look at your very beginning incarnation all the way into the future even. um,
So
and
would you get
so
one through a QHHT practitioner, or where would you get one of those from?
so the Akashic records reading, I would say probably the best person if you're wanting to look at your galactic side of it, your history is like the Starseed part. I would say Debbie Solaris. I would say she's probably the foremost expert on. Well, that would be like her specialty is going into your galactic history because she's a Octurian starseed herself. So she really has that gift to be able to look at that. Um, and so I would start there. I would start there for sure. Yeah. And reading starseed material, and if it does resonate with you, then it does. I know when Dolores Cannon would describe the characteristics of the star seeds, and I mean almost at like 98% of what she said all resonated with me. So that's how I knew, like that's like she's describing me, basically, you know. And so I would say, yeah, start there.
So how would describe your experience working with the subconscious, because it's amazing, and I've
Hmm.
seen some past life regressions that I was just flabbergasted by. So tell us about your experience, not maybe even with yourself, like your experience of working with the subconscious and the things it was revealing, and maybe even what it was like experiencing the subconscious speaking through you.
Yeah, so the subconscious, well, I know as a hypnotherapist, as a QHHT practitioner, I had this one client, and I won't say his name, but he did give me permission to mention what I'm about to mention because I asked him. But I regressed this one client, and he was a younger client, maybe a couple years younger than me, and and he was an attorney, so he wasn't really into spirituality as much, or or the paranormal or galactic history, or stuff like that. So when I regressed him, I took him through a past life, and then he was, and then after his past life, he kind of went into the sky, after his past life, like into and he's like, oh yeah, I'm like in space. I see all these stars, all these planets, and then he was like describing, and then the way he started describing things to me, he was getting real animated and everything. So I was started smiling. I was sitting there smiling, and then three beings came up to him in the regression, and they said, they 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 met him in the regression, and then they said, yeah, and then he was telling me, he's like, there's these three beings here, and he goes, they just said you're sitting there smiling from ear to ear, and I was like, what? Because he was laying there with his eyes closed. I know he couldn't see me. And then he goes, yeah, they said that they know you, and that you're here to help with to help raise the consciousness here on Earth, and started going into all this long story. And that session really blew me away, because I didn't tell this client about my starseed lineage or anything like that. He was a stranger to me. He didn't know that I even referred to myself as a starseed, and so that, I know that not the ordinary person is going to deal with this stuff, but that's what happened to me, as a hypnotherapist. And then I started getting pieces of information here, pieces there, with through my clients for me, which doesn't really happen for practitioners that often either, but it did for me for some reason. And I think it happened that way because of the journey I was on, the self discovery that I was going through and stuff. So yeah, I mean,
I just find that very, very interesting, and just the fact that you're a hypnotherapist and you use all these different techniques. You
mhm.
truly know how to work with the subconscious mind in different ways. So that's really amazing, and I'm just flabbergasted at the knowledge you have about your past lives. And so I know each person is on their own journey, and they're on a journey to find their own purpose. And so, um, can you tell us where we can reach you? What is your contact information and your business
Yeah, so I have a website, and it's my name. It's www.benmagante.com, benmagante.com. You can find me through my website. And I do regression work, energy healing. It all depends on what you need, but most people do come to me just because they're looking for a regression, and so I love doing the regression work. I like helping people with their self discovery as well, because I went through the same thing, or am still going through it.
And so, do you
You
do
know.
in-person sessions or online, or or in person? How does that work?
So I do both. I do QHHT in person, and then the online version I do is called BQH, for Beyond Quantum Healing, and it's a different version of a regression, but it does the same thing as quantum healing hypnosis does for the person. It takes them through a past life, and then contacts the higher self, and then we go for the healing if that's necessary. And so it's the same thing as a QHHT, but I call it BQH for the online version.
Okay, That sounds good. I want to thank you so much for joining me, and for it's been hard to get Ben because he's so busy with his learning and working and being with clients. So thank you so much for being here. And do you want to leave us with any last words, like anything that you want to speak on, or dispel any myths about, or anything like that?
Yeah, I would just like to tell people to stay open minded, and we are shifting into the fifth dimension, so things are rocky, and they're gonna continue to be rocky. The economy is gonna get rough because I think it's collapsing into a new different. It's gonna be different, So just hang in there. And if you feel like you may be a star seed, start hanging out with other star seeds, and you'll watch their journey, and you'll learn a lot from that as well.
So before we go, though, there was recently some sightings, and there's been sightings since I've been born, but these were all in different places on the same day. What do you think that was about?
That's they're
Never
preparing.
put
They're
in,
preparing everybody.
huh?
Yeah, I think they're preparing everybody, slowly breaking the ice, I would say, in terms of showing their presence.
Yeah. So I'm
Yeah.
excited because we do need some help. I feel like we need a intercessor, if I'm saying that, pronouncing it correctly, because it seems like even though we're mighty in numbers, we're not able to join together, or we're not joining together. We're very disconnected, and so it seems like we do need an outside source to come in and kind of bring balance back. So thank you so much, Ben. And thank you for the listening audience. I want you to come back, and if you have any questions about on the replay, please put them in the comment section, and we'll be sure to um, answer those. And feel free to reach out to Ben. He's a very good practitioner, has a lot of knowledge, and thank you for joining us here today. Thank you so much. So how'd it go, Ben?
It went good. Yeah,
That
I like